as Hollow Art presents Lynn Gitau, a renowned Web3 blockchain metaverse and NFT thought leader, educationist hailing from Nairobi, Kenya. Lynn's expertise and passion for the metaverse and NFTs led her to found Metaversations, an organization that aims to evangelize, educate, and create immersive metaverse experiences through meaningful collaborations with architects, builders, and NFT creatives in Africa. She's also a founding member of the African Meta Club, the first DAO in Africa that seeks to preserve and protect African culture through NFTs and the metaverse. Lynn's contributions to the industry have seen her appointed as a educational committee member of the World Metaverse Council. Lynn's journey in Web3 began in 2018, and since then, she has established partnerships with global brands seeking expansion in the African market. Her expertise is also as has made her a keynote speaker in major conferences, masterclasses, and workshops focused on decentralized finance, Metaverse, and Web3. Lynn's dedication to empowering and supporting women in technology has earned her the moniker Femipowerist, and she has been profiled in popular press outlets such as American established magazines, the Black Entrepreneur magazine, the Daily Nation magazine, among others. Overall, Lynn is one of the most sought-after experts in the metaverse and NFTs in Africa, making significant strides in expanding the industry's reach in the continent. Her educational background is in public relations and mass communication, which she uses extensively to intersect technology and tell African stories. Welcome, Lynn.
Hi, thank you for the warm introduction. I'm so honored. I'm here in Nairobi, Kenya. Wherever you're from, receive my greetings. Looking forward to a very interactive and educative session. Thank you so much, Mariam.
Thank you, Lynn. We're delighted to have you also. It's a bit of a delay.
Yes,
Let me know if ever uh, uh, I speak over you, but I think you were done and we're moving on into the dialogue section now. And so I just wanted to thank you also for being one of our advisors at Hollow Art. And Hollow Art is bridging art, science, and technology for exponential innovation. In that regard, Lynn, I wonder if you might be able to share some insights and thoughts about you and I met on a panel, actually a Web3 panel, organized by Laurent. And Laurent uh, had a fantastic lineup where we chatted about the details of, or, the landscape of digital access, digital literacy. And I wonder if we can start with that perhaps.
wow. It's a very interesting conversation. I probably think it's not going to come to an end, but we can tackle each day and we can always tackle it daily. So when it comes to digital literacy and access to internet connectivity, it's still a challenge where I'm from in Africa. And we have made progress, however, but it's still a challenge. We still have over 47% of Africans who don't have access to electricity. So these are the kind of people you cannot tell them about digital literacy. However, that is a progress for us because looking back, when I was growing up, I actually grew up in a place where there was no electricity, no internet, and all that. But however, we're seeing a shift. And with this kind of conversations with our governments, always also seeing the need to have these getting done, they are in a very speed momentum. They are catching up with the world. We don't want to play catching up again and again and again. It's a pattern that we have been witnessing since centuries ago. But right now, we want to see how can we leapfrog and catch up with the world and also contribute and shape the world. So this is something that it's work in progress. I can't say we're in a bad state, and I can't say we are there yet. But it's work in progress, and we also having a lot of partnerships from other people from other countries, from the European side, from the Northern America, from the Chinese side. So this kind of partnerships also enable us to leapfrog. So I think we're making very good progress, but there's still much to be done.
Absolutely. And you spoke about catch up, and I'd like to hone in on that word, because there's a sense of time and a sense of place in terms of being able to catch up. And in some ways, I see Africa and as a continent made up of multiple countries, um, leading some of these areas. And one of the I think hidden aspects is, for me, you spoke about, international support, the changing landscape of relational networks, is the raw materials that are required for um, some of the technologies that we're using today. And so I wonder how that cultural self-authorship or co-authorship happens to shift from catching up to leading.
Mm. So when it comes to raw materials, I think Africa has every raw material that can take it to the next phase of the digital transformation. When we look at cobalt, coltan, iron, copper, these are things that are required in the electric sector and the whole digital space. But the thing is, we still haven't, majority of the countries, let's give an example of Congo. Congo produces 90% of the coltan, yeah, produces 90% of the coltan, a key component in battery manufacturing to make batteries last longer. But when you come to Congo, there's a very huge imbalance between the production of their raw materials and the benefits that people are getting. So it's something that has to do with policies between the international governments that are importing from Africa and the African government and the people themselves. Because when it comes to also natural resources, there's a lot of greed that comes with them. Let's admit it. There's always the dark side of human nature. And from the foundation that Africa got, maybe from pre-colonial and post-colonial era, there was a foundation that was laid, and it has really done so much harm to the continent. The continent hasn't been able to recover from it. There's a story, people usually say it's because it took 100 years to maybe colonize Africa. It will also take probably 100 years to restore the people back. But I don't go with that narrative. I think we can always leapfrog. It's up to us to take responsibilities, because the leaders there are the greatest. If you asked me, we're the enemy of ourselves. If we could also learn from other countries, because we're not the only continent with resources. We have Russia, we have Ukraine, we have all these countries that have resources. How do they interact with the other world? Well, maintaining a balance between economic gains and also the exporting gains. So we have to create that balance. We haven't struck that balance, and it's because of the current policies and governance that some of our African countries have. But again, I always say it's a work in progress. It's not something that's gonna take maybe 2 years or 5 years. Maybe perhaps like say 100 years. Perhaps it's gonna take less. But the thing is, we have to make progress. We have to sit down as a continent. It's a continental responsibility. If my brother in Congo suffers, I in Kenya will also suffer. If in Tanzania suffers, my my other colleague in Zambia will. It's a continental responsibility, not per country, but a responsibility, coming together and deciding how we're going to collaborate and also benefit the people or the communities on the ground who are mining, who are sweating, who are the ones doing the logistics. It's a personal responsibility as well. I take it that.
Absolutely. I think, we have one of our artists as well in Nigeria, in Lagos, and there is some connectivity issues at times when we have our calls. I think as we look at our digital landscape and what that unification looks like at a continental level and then an intercontinental level. What are your thoughts about satellite providers and internet access? Because to be able to participate, I think there's an entry point, and that brings us also to our title today, which is Immersive Freedom. In order to have access to this immersive freedom, there are some pre-steps predicated, you know, uh, things that need to be in place in order to be able to participate. And the last piece of that is part of Hollow Art's mission is to help humanity really reimagine ourselves as earthlings as we engage in interplanetary travel. If we can fast forward and accelerate 100 200 years down the road, or into space, if we're looking at warp speed, there are going to be opportunities where we no longer have that intercontinental division, and we reimagine ourselves as hailing from the same planet. And so with that, I wonder, what are your thoughts about satellites, internet access, and the notion of immersive freedom in a digital age when we don't necessarily have equal access to things like the internet?
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. Uh, with the emergence of Web3, I tend to look at the world now as a singular village. Web3 is making it happen. But as you have mentioned, some people are not yet in the Web3 because they don't have access to the infrastructure required to get into the Web3. So currently, I'm actually from a conference. I still have my tag. We were discussing about the Kenya internet and African space. What is the kind of internet that we want? What do we want as a country? And how is our safety in the internet? And that was our discussion today. And one of the things that I've taken away from this day's summit about the internet is, first of all, government should be heavily involved. Government and private sectors, people who are providing internet, they should now look at Africa in an angle of not having consumers, but an angle of this is a potential place whereby we're not just going to have customers, but we are going to have a whole ecosystem in this continent, and we can build a whole ecosystem, maybe for manufacturing, maybe for connecting the whole world, for digital learning, for a lot of things that we were talking about. Is when we're looking at internet, it's just about bringing an internet or coming here as a company for profit, and it's not about the government looking at internet company for profit. It's about now looking at the bigger space. What does the internet have to offer? Is it a more accessible educational system? Is it more accessible connectivity? Is it more accessible jobs for the continent? Because a lot of young youth are still unemployed. So it has to come to that lens. How are we looking at this internet? Is it going to help our economy, or will we just settle for the short-term gains of profits and getting internet from this company coming here, and just So when it comes to internet, there's also discussions on, do we go for broadband, headlights, or the I'm not very keen on the terms. Sorry if I butcher the terms when it comes to the internet, but when we're looking at which one is more faster, which one is more accessible to even someone who is in the village, who is close to the lakes, who is close to the beaches, who is close to the mountains, which internet is more favorable for such kind of people, because Africa is very structured in a way whereby we have so many geographical features. We're not just plain in the savannah. We have everything. We have plains, we have oceans, we have seas. So what is the best internet we can go about? What is the best approach? Is it a satellite? Is it a broadband, what is the best we can go with? So the discussion is still going. I think there's a lot of discussions that are happening. However, we still have in my country, Kenya, we already have a telecom that is already providing 5G. It's already in Ethiopia. So when it comes to these 54 countries, we always find a gap where only 2 countries or top 5 are pioneering, and the rest, we don't know what is happening. So there's also a that also calls for a keen discussion. It has to start with government and key telecom stakeholders. And also, when it comes to the internet as well, we are also concerned about security. So somehow one of the reasons why we're still laggard is because we haven't found frameworks on legal policies on cybersecurity. So there's some maybe countries that are playing safe. We will find some people playing safe. We'll find others playing it risky. So we also have to borrow from each other. I think this is a global village. That is also one of the things we have to consult for maybe other countries, and we can look how they are doing it, and maybe we can borrow from. It's not an excuse though. Not an excuse. So there's so much to be done, and I'm seeing a very positive future. I'm with you and the whole art community, seeing a whole world where we are all connected, and we are one village, in short. Yeah.
I wonder if we can hear a little bit, Lynn, about your experiences and what were some of the salient factors, the key, markers of how, introducing the world of technology and how can we replicate that at scale? So what worked in terms of your personal anecdotes of, your journey with Web3, NFTs, the first, DAO in Africa? How did that journey unfold for you?
For us, it's because we are a very youthful population. One in out of 4 people, uh, according to statistics that have been recently released, 1 out of 4 people in the next 20, maybe in 2050, will be an African. 1 out of 4 people will be an African. So the thing is, we are still a young and youthful population, and with us, the young people, we're very hungry. We're now exposed to the cyber world. We are now exposed to other places, and with that exposure we can borrow it and now look at it as a way of improving our lives, because we have realized waiting for governments all the time, waiting for this and this to be done, it doesn't work, you'll be left behind. So what we do is come together, or is communities. Blockchain is so big in Africa, especially here in Kenya and Nigeria, because one of the key drivers, what has worked so much, is communities of young people sharing ideas, learning from each other, collaborating with the rest of the world, partnerships with organizations like you, Hollow Art, that's I'm a part of the community. You have artists from Nigeria. I think for us, it's community. Community has worked for us. And when you get the community, you can now educate them. It's a teach one to teach one to teach one. Then you'll find a whole binary tree of people now who are more digitally literate. It's because it doesn't take taking the whole population of over 1.3 billion people. This takes communities, little communities, and these communities, when you impact one person from the community, they impact their families. Maybe their families, they are maybe 10 or 12. They've already educated their families, educate others, teach two, teach four. It's just a multiplication game. But what has worked so much is communities, and of course support from other organizations and collaboration also. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I really enjoy, and I think the first time we were on that Future of Work panel together, I really enjoy listening to you because I think you have a great gift for narrating and orating the story in a way that's accessible and timeless. And what I want to hone in now on is the collaboration aspect. You know, at Hollow Art, we modernize some ancient proverbs, and one of them is related to, you know, we can go further together than alone. And what we look to do is to plant
Mm-hmm.
ideas. We help ideas grow. And so when we think about collaboration models and ancient wisdom, what would be some models that you think might be helpful to share with our community in terms of what collaboration looks like or what it could look like in terms of smaller communities, as you said, you know, blossoming out into these trees.
Sorry, I think I lost my internet for a short while. Do you
Yes,
mind?
I wasn't sure. Happy to repeat the question, not a problem. I was wondering, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
I was wondering if you might be able to share a little bit more about collaboration and some of the ancient wisdom. We have a proverb that we've modernized, but based on the idea of, you know, we go farther together than we do alone. And the same is true in space, where you see collaboration that transcends, you know, tribal identities. And we end up working together in a way that really looks at humanity as a global village. So any thoughts on what that might look like, collaboration in our modern times, and any wisdom that we can draw from uh, ancient collaboration models, because collaboration looks different across cultures, and there's a different essence in some communities. So what would that look like as we move forward?
From the ancient wisdom I have from our culture and how we used to do it, and it's still continuing. I think we're still strong on culture. For us, it has always been being interested in what you're doing, and what you being interested in what I'm doing, and meeting at a level ground. Okay, you do this and I do this. How can we meet at a point whereby I can be of help to you, and how can we meet at a point where you can be of help to me? So for us, it has always been, we call it Ubuntu, a culture of communism or unity or community, whereby, okay, you have this, I have this, how do we bring it as a synergy? For us, it has always been, let's forget about monetary, and maybe it might be part of that, and everything, it's part of that, especially right now in the modern world. But it has to begin with interest. I'm interested in what you do, I love what you do, I do this and this and that.
Hmm.
Here's how I can help. And maybe you don't really have to reciprocate at that immediate time, but maybe you can reciprocate it in another time when I'm in need of you. But the thing is, let's meet at a level ground. We may not have that immediate level ground as such, but we can always keep in touch. Maybe the need may arise after 10 years, the need may arise after 3 years, but the thing is, can we keep Ubuntu? Can we keep our relationship alive? Can we just support each other? Can we just look at what you're doing and then just support it? That's the essence of collaborations from how we've learned it from the past. Yeah. But now it's a little bit more monetary and more capitalistic, and I think you're better giving that wisdom on the other side of the modern collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's, you know, Ubuntu is a concept that's widely shared in many circles. And I think what we're talking about here is a nuanced difference between extraction the nature of relationships and negotiation. So, you know, the base of that would be that common ground, respect, and a profound, I think, cherishing of the preciousness of each community,
Yeah.
to say that we're
Yeah.
not here in a transactional, you know, and I speak of this having taken some, I would say, I guess, Ivy League courses in negotiation, where I find the models to be somewhat lacking in terms of the basis of human relationships. When we're thinking about the long term, it's not a time boxed issue. It's a paradigm shift in the way that we see ourselves, that we see each other, and the way that we engage. When we speak about now immersive freedoms, Lynn, we went back and forth thinking about our title today. And we both agreed on immersive freedom because there's a sense of um, I would say curiosity, play, and not necessarily anonymity, but this opportunity to engage the imagination. And so I wonder if you might be able to share a little bit your thoughts about that.
Hmm. Wow. I think you become again. I remember when we were debating on the topic. I think it took us some time to come up with a topic for this. Maybe just come again with the question because I was just taken aback with
Yes,
that one.
absolutely. It was you know, to be fair, it was a convoluted question. I think what I'm asking is what angle would you like to speak to in terms of immersive freedom? Because originally we had talked about identity and we had talked about, you know, how we perceive ourselves. And in the era of digital worlds and the cybersphere, the new sphere, we have the opportunity to reinvent ourselves through avatars and digital identities. And how does that, you know, it's an open question. You're welcome to take it however you wish.
Oh wow! So for me, I'd take it. For me, immersive freedom would mean a space for safety, a better space. We have learned from Web 2. We have learned from mistakes in Web 2. Yes, we are now at Web 2.5, but I'm of the thought when we're going to immersive world or the metaverse world, it should be a world for freedom whereby we won't have these flashes. Web 2 has been good. Web 2 has grown our businesses. Web 2 has connected us to the world. Actually, right now we're using Web 2 and we have tasted its fruit. But can we just make it better, making it making it more feel more safe and more inclusive and also more, how would I call it? More of it's my data. I have to feel that someone owns my data and it's theirs. They have it for life. When I lose it, they have it on their cloud. I don't have it. An enormous process to retrieve my data. And I also feel like immersive freedom should be a space whereby we are not we are aware of ourselves and not drawn so much into the virtual world that we forget who we are in the real world, because reality will always remain. We will breathe, we will see, we have to eat, we have to excrete, we have to talk to our parents, we have to talk to people around us, and virtual world cannot replace that. But however, if we can't find that awareness, we will find ourselves getting into another deep addiction of the virtual world. We have seen a lot of marriages and families being apart, being destroyed through social media. Something as simple as the virtual world, where I'm forgetting the people who I'm present with, and I'm now focusing on the people who are now in spaces where I don't even know. I've never been there. Yes, it's good, but we have to find that balance and self-awareness as humans, that virtual world is just a complement or is just an extension. It's not our world, it's just an extension. So if we're going to immersive freedom, we are not going to carry along serious addict addict of social media. Because you can imagine, if we are now addicted to phones the way we are, an average person touches his or her phone over 300 times a day according to data. I'm not so sure, but can correct me if I'm wrong. And now you can imagine the screens are now being brought to our eyes directly, and everything is in our eyes, and our whole sensorial organs have been now taking control. So if we don't find that balance of the real world and the extended world, it's gonna be terrible, terrible than now. It's gonna be. I don't want to imagine. It can look so daunting. It's creating a very, it's creating a scenario where I don't want to get there personally. So immersive freedom has to come along with self-awareness as human beings, and security and safety, and taking responsibility to be better humans in this next iteration of the internet.
Absolutely. And I'm passionate about this, Lynn. I appreciate you bringing that up because what we're also talking about is the technology that we design redesigns us. And so hollow art, the series of dialogues that we've had, it's a bit like a puzzle and each person brings a different perspective, and when you put it together you see a greater whole. And I have been presenting about this topic of illusion or reality, the changing nature of education through the technologies that we use that then change the way that our brains work and our relationships. There was a study, again, in terms of credence, I think it was more of a soundbite, but our attention spans have been reduced to less than a goldfish from when we had started in 2019 to now at 20, I think in 2012 we were at 12 seconds and now we're at 8 seconds, probably less. And goldfish have an attention span of 9 seconds. And then we get into how children interact. When you look at how TikTok, technologies that are programmed to retrain our brains for short attention spans is really worth looking at, uh, especially when we think about what's coming around the corner in terms of brain-computer interface. So when we have chips implanted in our brains, or if we have wearables that are coming, glasses that provide us with an access. And so in that regard, we've written some pieces about how humanity is changing. We're moving from Homo sapien to Homo digitalis, Homo interpretans, according to our speaker and advisor who spoke at one of our sessions, Dr. Garcia Tello, and also the idea of what kind of future do we want? Because you speak about relationships and technology, and I agree with you. What is that future, and can we agree if some people want to become more technologically, you know, um, bionic or cyborgian futures? We've spoken about that with some of our speakers. How do we collaborate on a future vision of for humanity? When we have different camps, and some people say let's go full force in technology and we can fully lose ourselves in our technologies, and another camp that potentially, or multiple camps that say, well, we have to measure it. And there was a stat that said Twitter users had a higher rate of divorce. So any thoughts
Oh,
on how we can collaborate on a collective vision for the future? Because what we're essentially seeing is a division of human species, some who are incredibly technologically advanced and just beyond, and some people who are really trying hard to stay grounded in the real world. And the impact for education for children having access to outdoor education and natural landscapes. So I don't know if there's a question in there, Lynn, just to wrap it up, but if you have any thoughts you'd like to share about how we can um, envision a brighter future for ourselves.
Wow, it's too late to turn back by now. We have realized it's too late to go back. It's too late. We can't go back. We are at a point of no return. It's either we forward much to the future or forward much, much, much to the future. There is no option to that. So, for me, how I envision it, man, it's tricky. I can't really predict what's going to come. AI is here actually. And recently we had a summit by Gadaverse called Immersive Intelligence, the conversion of artificial intelligence and XR. That's crazy because we're now having an immersive world, and we're now having AI who is the, maybe let's look at AI as the soul of this whole technology, because AI is the one that is gonna power data, gonna create these autonomous lives. It's the one that is going to create life in the virtual world, because it has data. It has data of speak. It has data of how we interact with each other. So it has this autonomy. It can run in an autopilot. Our avatars can run on an autopilot, or our immersive avatars, or our hyper realistic images can run on an autopilot using uh, AI. And that's the kind of future we are heading to. AI, XR, cloud computing, high level speed of internet, and we are at a point of no return, as I said it earlier. So why do you come here is the world has a lot of good people. Research has been conducted. If people were to choose the positive and the negative side, people will always choose the positive side. However, we have this minority of.
Oh, Lynn, your audio cut out, I think. Uh,
Sorry.
you're back. You're back. So you said we have a minority of usually people will choose good, and yet we have.
Yeah. Yes, sorry about that. So people will always choose good. The majority will always choose good. But there's always this tiny, minute population of dark souls. These ones are the ones who we should be scared of. These are the ones who we should be cautious of, because it takes just one hole to sink a whole ship. Just one hole, a tiny hole to sink a whole ship. And this is the same kind of tiny population of the minority of dark souls that we should watch out for, because they're the ones who maybe have control over money. They have the ones who have control, they have the power, they have governance. What if this technology lands in the wrong hands, and perhaps these wrong hands are the ones who are in power, and they're just very few. If we look at history, and maybe we look at people like Hitler and the massive millions of deaths he caused, just one person, it wasn't even a whole army, just one person who could spark a whole massacre, or a whole I don't know even how to describe it. And if you also look at Africa, in the conflicts that we've had conflicts as a continent. And when we look at the people who start those conflicts, it's not even the people, it's not the nation. The people don't want to fight, they are peaceful, they're the nicest humans you could ever interact with. But the top, the few minority, they lit up a fire, and the whole nation becomes chaos. So these are the small, tiny population we should look out for. I'm not even scared of AI. I'm scared of the wrong hands of the tiny population that has control and power of AI, and has control and power of XR, and has control and power over policy. These are the people who should keep a guard on, and we should always stand alert. We need to have a lot of whistleblowers who are ready to just blow the whistle when things look like they're going south, because we can't risk with this one. It's too late to turn back, but we can't risk with just these tiny populations. That's why we need to take a lot of action when it comes to policies and governance. We need to take a lot of action when it comes to speaking out. Speaking out. We shouldn't take as everything as normal. You know, the way we take everything for granted. We see, AI is not gonna do that. Until I see it, that is when I'm going to believe it. That kind of mentality might lead us into a very bad place. It's for us to evaluate, here's AI, here's a massive intelligence, this is what can happen, and we list the positive things, positive things to do with the education, a common world, a very peaceful world. And also we can write an issue tree or on the negative things, or the what could go wrong, what's the worst that can happen with this, and how can we prevent it as early as now. Although a lot of Silicon Valley and tech titans have raised flags. We've seen Elon say, let's stop this for now. We have seen Google, the godfather of AI, raising the flag, let's stop this. And these are things we cannot take for granted, because I don't believe immersive intelligence or the world of the metaverse or extended reality can survive without AI. AI is the soul of the digital world. So these are the things we should look out to, especially that tiny population. I'm always insisting on this tiny. It takes one person to blow of the future. It takes one person to a very cyber chaotic future. And that is what we should be very urgently taking keen on.
The audio has ended, so I'm assuming that you've paused, and I concur with you. I think the atrocities that you spoke about, sparked by one person, from the Holocaust to the genocides that occurred in Africa and elsewhere in the world, there's a huge risk and there's huge opportunity. And so when you speak about, whistleblowers, and we need to speak up, all I can think about is, the people who have spoken up have been shown the door. And, I presented on the ethical impact of generative AI not too long ago. I too was also shown the door. And so I think part of what we're getting at is that there's a sense that the people who hold power, and it's somewhat ironic that we're on this call together when we're talking about regulation and power shifts. How can we have voices heard without having them be kind of buried by the algorithmic, you know, um, uh, programming that creates ways to silence people in the digital age? And so what I'm talking about here are epistemic bubbles. And we see that with regulation in certain countries that requires censorship. So you're not allowed to have free access to the internet, or you can't, go on certain websites. And every country has this. We have these pots of AI truths. And so it's like, well, how do we connect and have voices be heard when there's a puppeteering of this voice will be heard now, and then this voice, and then you have groups of voices who want to be heard together, sitting here in a cacophony, in a bit of an echo chamber. Oh, I agree. And then you have people here. And then, so that comes back to that collaboration model that I was alluding to, and the conflict resolution of power dynamics. These are big questions, and I really appreciate you, fielding them. Do you have any thoughts about how we might be able to build frameworks to bridge across these polarized divides. You know, we say one, we say two. How do we agree on what that reality is? And who are the gatekeepers? So when you speak about,
Oh,
I don't know if there was a delay, but I saw there was a little bit of a delay.
yeah.
Were you able to hear my question?
Yes, yes, yes. Let me just contribute to that. Or in power dynamics, and I think there was a quote. I can't quote who that person is, but he or she said, um, the the enemy of the people is when the people believe they have no power. When we believe we have no power just because an algorithm didn't spread your word or someone else shunned your message, and you believe you have no power, that is the enemy because you have the power. The fact that they shun you down is because they believe your voice is too loud enough and they are like, shh, don't tell the world, shh. That means you're powerful enough to tell the world what they need to hear. And we live in a world whereby when you speak the truth, you get censored, you're accused of so many things, and you're probably set aside, you're banned from this social media, or you're banned from this and this and that. But does that mean you don't have power? In fact, that amplifies your power. So, what you have to find is another way to express your thoughts and express the truth. If this channel is not working, how else can I go about it? Because the power is there. No one should ever believe they don't have power to to take an action. I think the world is terrible because of the good people who stay silent. There's a quote on that, and that is true. It couldn't be any. I agree with that totally. So when we think about this power action and whistleblower and the gatekeepers, we have 7 billion people on the planet. And as I said, the research indicates when people want to choose positive or negative, they will always go for the positive. So the people who are shining us the truth down is just the minority. How do we get to this majority of the people who want AI for good, who want metaverse for good, who want everything for good? Those are the people now we have to come together and avoid these silo communications or polarized communications. I want this, you want this, everyone wants to be heard. I mean, that doesn't work. It has to be from an angle whereby we all come together. We want to be heard. Let's stand against the villain. It has always been about the villain and the heroes and the people involved in the stories. And I think North American movies have really done well to depict that. The villain versus the bad person, the good people, and the superhero and the villain. It has always been that way. So the model remains. The fact that you are shunned down means you're powerful enough. So the thing is now, how do we amplify that voice? Find other people who are talking the same language as you, and keep whistleblowing. Keep whistleblowing. If the media, mainstream media companies are owned by, let's just say, the villains, obviously you won't be the bad news won't be about raising an alarm of what is happening. It will be about what they want it, what they want to feature. But we can also come up with our own media. I mean, it's a Web3 world, and I always feel like Web3 has given us so much freedom, and also Web2 has played a part in expressing ourselves without depending on mainstream medias. We are now even in an era of influencers. Can we get influencers who talk the same language as us? Can we get organizations who have enough big traction that speak the same language as us? Can we now combine all those voices and raise an alarm? You can't do alone. We have to let go of that mindset of doing it alone because it's not possible. The villains as well are not doing it alone. They always get a system or a team that can serve them, can serve their greedy purposes. So we can learn from the villains as well, and learn it's not one. one-man show. It's a collaborative show, and we have the power, and we still need to speak a lot and a lot and a lot. There is no time to shut our mouth. We are in a very perilous time. If something like if someone like Elon Musk can sit down and say, let's pause this, if someone like the godfather of AI can sit down and write it up, let's look at this keenly. I've also done some research on the past, on the fathers of computer science, on the fathers of AI. They also wrote publications about AI and all these immersive technologies back then in the 1850s. I'm not really sure. I don't have the numbers or the accurate figures, but I do have the publications. I can send them maybe soon. I have the publications. In the 1950s, they were still raising these concerns. In the 1940s, in the 18s, they were still raising these concerns. We are not the first generation. So they have always been making noise. And despite them being even the fathers of AI who brought this technology to life, they still spoke about what if they replace, what if this thing we've built replaces our jobs. They wrote about it. I'll send the publications from the 18s and the 50s and the 19s, and what the fathers of technology and computer science used to raise concerns about. So it's a non-stop job. It's a personal responsibility to always talk, talk about it until something is done. And first of all, who is in power? We have to really answer that question. Who is in power? Who is in power? Is Yes, we have the power. Who is the final decision maker as well? Who can we work with? And it's a collaborative effort. Before the villains do it, we have to do it before they get there first.
Thank you, Lynn. I always appreciate, as I said, listening to you and engaging with you. I think there's a lot of narratives that need to see the light of day, and part of that is the role of women in computer science. There's an article that I am happy to share with you about pioneering women in computer science, and I think it's become a little bit more common knowledge now that the first computers were referred to as women who were highly gifted in mathematical ability, and the ENIAC was, um, I don't know what word to use for it, but really enabled with the help of women. And there's been, I think, when we speak of power, and this is beyond, for me at least, gender-based analysis or equality. I think it's really looking at what does it mean to be a good human? What does it mean to be human? And how can we evolve humanity? Can we have enlightened AI? Can we look at an AI that has maternal AI? What would that look like if AI was programmed to think of data sovereignty in the same way that, say, a mother would protect potentially her children. And so Web3 offers an opportunity for this power shift. We're seeing it right now with regulation around the world. We're seeing various currencies that are introduced, different ways that nations are collaborating together to rewrite the narrative. There's always a battle between this dualistic fear and love, and this idea of what we can do, the good and bad duality. When do you think we can transcend that duality to say, some people are villains, some people are heroes, and look at each individual as, trying to do what they can? You spoke about dark souls, and I wonder if that ties into this, you know, clarifying what that light would be if we were to expand that light so that there would be no need for whistleblowers, so that, you know, the people who had power to architect technology made the right choices or made the best choices available to them right at the onset, in terms of a long-term visioning and line of sight, so that we don't have to say, you know, let's pause or let's backtrack. As you said, there is no stopping, we march on. What would be a way for us to think beyond good and bad, villain and hero, you know, and as you said, to look at this global village, and as Hollow is presenting, this opportunity for us to re-engage and reinvent, rebrand humanity as Earthlings. What would it take, do you think? And what role does Web3 have to play?
Oh, thank you. I think I'm not gonna take. I think I'll be leaving in the next maybe 1 minute. I will also take this opportunity to maybe uh maybe until next time. Sorry about that
Yes, no,
because of
we're
the
at
timing.
time, so we're good. We're ready
Yeah,
to end.
yeah, yeah. So I think we should just. I think humans will always be humans. There's no solution to duality. What we only need to is manage how we can strike a balance between not going to this farmer's extreme, because duality will always be there. I will never promise that we'll ever get to a point whereby there's no duality unless in heaven. But as long as we live here, duality will always be there with us. So Web3 is one of the management where we have now decentralized worlds that has given us the ability to take our power back, take ownership of our data, take ownership of our financial lives, take back what we believe that should be now accessible to everyone and not just to a powerhouse. And when we look at blockchain and how transparent it is, I think that's where um, management of data also comes in, and management of how we control our own decision making is a human right. No one has to make decisions for your financial economy. No one has to make decision for you how you're going to live to the next 10 years. It should be a right for everyone to live in a world whereby they've been given an opportunity to shape it. So I think with this, I'm going to call it a goodbye. I'm running out of time. It's late in the night. I really have to go. Maybe we can say a parting shot.
Thank you for joining us, Lynn. Have a great rest of the day.
Okay, thank you so much. I enjoyed it. Have a nice one. Thank you. Bye.
You as well. Bye.